I planned a quiet Christmas dinner. Just me, my wife, and our son home from Chicago. At 10:47 p.m., as the dishes cooled, he stood up shaking, pointed at the wrapped box by the tree, and shouted, "That gift was never for you." My heart dropped. I'm 63. I've survived. Layoffs, funerals, betrayal, but not what he said next. For a moment, after my son shouted, no one moved. The clock over the stove kept ticking, loud enough to feel like it was counting something down. My wife, Ellen, sat frozen at the table, her hands still folded the way they had been when she said grace. I remember thinking how strange that was, that she hadn't even flinched. Our son Mark was standing now, chest rising and falling too fast, his face red like he'd been holding this in for years, and it finally tore its way out. "What are you talking about?" I asked. My voice didn't sound like my own. It came out thin, uncertain, like I was asking permission to speak in my own house. Mark didn't look at me. He was staring at the tree, at the gift with my name on it, the one Ellen had insisted we open last. "Dad," he said, swallowing hard, "you were never supposed to see that." Ellen finally moved. She reached for Mark's arm, whispering his name, but he pulled away like her touch burned. That's when I noticed her eyes, not scared, not surprised, just tired. That scared me more than anything Mark had said. "See what?" I asked. "It's a gift, you wrapped it." She didn't answer. Mark did. "It's not from Mom," he said, "and it's not for you." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. 63 years old, and I still recognized that feeling. It was the same one I'd felt when the plant manager called me into his office in '98 and shut the door behind him. The calm, before something you can't undo. I looked at Ellen. "Who is it from?" I asked. She stood up slowly, pushing her chair back. "We shouldn't do this tonight," she said. "It's Christmas." "Don't," Mark snapped. "Don't hide behind that." I walked toward the tree. Mark stepped in front of me, blocking my way like I was a stranger trying to break into the house. He'd never done that before. As a kid, he'd always moved aside for me, even when he was mad. "Move," I said quietly. "You open that," he said, his voice breaking, "and everything changes." I stopped. I could hear my own heartbeat. "Then tell me now," I said, "because something already has." Mark looked at his mother again. "You tell him," he said. Ellen closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet, but her voice was steady. "It's from your brother," she said. I laughed once, sharp and ugly. "My brother's been dead for 12 years. "No," Mark said. "He's been gone." That word, gone, not dead, not buried. Just gone. I felt dizzy. I grabbed the back of the couch to steady myself. "This isn't funny," I said. "If this is some kind of sick joke—" "It's not," Ellen said. "I swear to you it's not." I thought of my brother Paul. The last time I saw him was at our father's funeral. He and I hadn't spoken much before that. Not since the argument, the one about the loan, about the land, about things that seem small until they rot for years. "He disappeared after that," I said. "Left town, didn't call, didn't write." "He did," Ellen said softly. "Just not to you." The room went quiet again, heavier than before. Mark sat down hard in his chair, like his legs had finally given out. "I found the letters last month," he said. "In the cedar chest, the one in the guest room." I looked at Ellen. "You kept letters from my brother." She nodded once. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "How far?" I asked. "How far did it go?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Finally she pointed at the gift. "Open it," she said. "You deserve to know." Mark shook his head. But he didn't stop me this time. I knelt by the tree, my knees aching, my hands trembling as I picked up the box. It was heavier than it looked. Inside, beneath the wrapping, was a plain brown envelope and a small metal key taped to the top. My name was written on the envelope in handwriting I hadn't seen in over a decade. Paul's handwriting. I stared at it until the letters blurred. "This is impossible," I said. "Read it," Mark said. I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter and a folded document. I read the first line, then had to sit back on my heels because the room started to spin. "If you're reading this, it means I finally ran out of time." I looked up at Ellen. What did he mean? She pressed her hand to her mouth. "He's sick," she said. "Very sick." Mark slammed his fist on the table. "You knew," he said. "You both knew before I did." "You weren't supposed to know at all," she said. Tears finally spilling over. "He asked me not to tell you. Either of you." I went back to the letter, my eyes scanning faster now. "I never stopped being your brother. I just stopped being welcome." Anger rose up in me, hot and sharp. "He blamed me," I said. "After all these years, there's more," Mark said. "Read the second page." I unfolded the document. It was a deed. My breath caught in my throat when I saw the address. The old lake property, the one Dad promised us both. The one Paul and I fought over until we stopped speaking. "What is this?" I asked. Ellen's voice was barely audible. "He bought out Dad's share before he died. Put it in a trust." "In whose name?" I asked. She didn't answer. Mark did. "Yours," he said. "Effective tonight. 11 p.m. I looked at the clock. It read 11:03. My head snapped up. "Why tonight?" Mark stood again, his face pale. "Because someone else was supposed to get it, and they don't know yet." "Who?" I asked. He looked at his mother. "Tell him." Ellen shook her head slowly. "I can't." Mark turned back to me, his eyes hard now, like he'd made a decision. "Dad," he said, "Aunt Carol thinks that property is hers, and she's bringing her lawyer tomorrow morning." I didn't say anything right away. I just stared at Mark, trying to place his words somewhere that made sense. Aunt Carol, lawyer. Tomorrow morning. It felt like pieces from different puzzles dumped onto the same table. Ellen sank back into her chair, like the strength had drained out of her, all at once. "Carol," I finally said. "My sister hasn't spoken to me in years." That didn't stop her from speaking to Paul, Mark said. His voice wasn't angry now. It was tight, controlled, like he was afraid if he raised it, everything would collapse. "She's been visiting him, handling things, or at least that's what she told me when I called her." I rubbed my face with both hands. My head was pounding. "Handling what things?" "The lake house," Mark said. "His medical care? His money?" Ellen flinched at that. She exaggerated. She said quickly, "Paul never trusted Carol with money, but he trusted you," I said, turning to her. "Enough to hide all this from me." She met my eyes. "He trusted me to keep the peace," she said. "Between you and him, between the family." "That's not peace," I said. "That's a lie that just takes longer to explode." Mark cleared his throat. "There's something else," he said. I almost laughed. "Of course there is." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. When I found the letters, I also found voicemails, saved to an old answering service. "Paul left them. For you." Ellen's head snapped up. "He told me he deleted those." "He didn't," Mark said. "He just hid them better." He set the phone on the table between us. For a second, no one moved. Then he pressed play. The voice that came through the speaker was older, rougher, but unmistakable. "My brothers, hey," Paul said. "If you're hearing this, then Ellen finally stopped protecting you from me, or from yourself. I don't know which." My chest tightened. Ellen let out a quiet sob. "I don't have much time," Paul continued. "Carol thinks she's in charge now. Thinks the lake house is already hers. She's wrong, but she's loud, and she's fast." The recording crackled, then steadied. "I'm sorry for how things ended between us. I was stubborn. So were you. But don't let her rewrite everything. Check the trust. Check the date. And whatever you do, don't let her into the house alone. The voicemail ended. The silence afterward felt heavier than anything that came before. I stood up slowly. My legs felt unsteady, like I'd stood too fast after sitting too long. When was this recorded? 2 weeks ago, Mark said, the night before Paul went back into the hospital. Back? I asked. Ellen wiped her eyes. He's been in and out all year, she said. Cancer, pancreatic. The word hit me harder than I expected. I thought of Paul as frozen in time, still angry, still walking away, not lying in a hospital bed, deciding what pieces of his life to put where. And Carol? I asked. She showed up after his second surgery. Ellen said she was just helping, bringing paperwork, talking to doctors. And you believed her, I said. I didn't trust her, Ellen said. But Paul didn't want you dragged into it. He said you'd never forgive him if you knew how bad it was. I looked at the clock again. 11:26 p.m. Christmas night, slipping toward morning. So tomorrow, I said. She comes here with a lawyer. Mark nodded. She thinks you don't know about the trust. She thinks Mom's still handling things. Ellen stiffened. I never told her about the transfer date. That's why she's coming, Mark said. She thinks she can scare you. Get you to sign something before you check anything. A cold clarity settled over me. Not panic. Not rage. Just focus. Where is Paul now? I asked. Mark hesitated. He was moved yesterday. Hospice. Same town as the lake house. I closed my eyes for a moment. 12 years of silence. And now this. I'm going to see him. I said. Ellen stood up sharply. Tonight? Yes, I said. Before Carol can get there first. It's snowing, she said. The roads. I don't care, I said. If he's still awake, I'm not wasting another hour. Mark was already grabbing his coat. I'll drive. Ellen looked between us. Fear and relief tangled on her face. What about me? I paused. You stay here, I said gently. If Carol calls. If she shows up early. And if she does, Ellen asked. I met her eyes. Don't sign anything, I said. Don't promise anything. And don't let her inside alone. We were out the door 10 minutes later. The car was quiet as Mark pulled onto the road, headlights cutting through the falling snow. Dad, he said after a while. I didn't mean for Christmas to end like this. I let out a long breath. Christmas ended a long time ago. I said, we just didn't know it. The drive felt endless. Every mile brought memories back. Fishing with Paul, the argument. The last thing I said to him. Words I'd replayed in my head for years, always thinking there'd be time to take them back. When we finally pulled into the hospice parking lot, it was nearly 1 a.m. The building was quiet, lights dimmed. A nurse at the desk looked up as we approached. I'm here to see my brother, I said. Paul Harris. She studied my face for a moment, then nodded. He asked about you earlier, she said. Room 214. My heart thudded hard against my ribs. Mark squeezed my shoulder before stepping back. I'll wait, he said. I walked down the hallway alone. Each step felt heavier than the last. When I reached the door, I hesitated, my hand hovering over the handle. Then I heard his voice from inside. Weak, but unmistakable. You always did knock too late, Paul said. I pushed the door open, and so looked smaller. Then I remembered, not fragile, exactly, but reduced, like someone had turned the volume down on him. His eyes opened wider when he saw me, and for a second neither of us spoke. 12 years of silence stood between us, heavy and awkward, waiting for someone to move it. Well, he said finally, his voice rough but steady. You made it. I almost didn't, I said. Not because I didn't want to, because I didn't know if you'd want me here. He let out a weak chuckle, That sounds like us. I stepped closer to the bed. Tubes. Monitors. Things I didn't want to understand. I pulled the chair up and sat. My knees stiff. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. About any of it. He closed his eyes for a moment. Because I was angry, he said. And then I was scared. And then it got too late to pretend I wasn't both. I nodded slowly. You should have told me. I know, he said. That's why I did what I did. The trust, I said. The letters. And the timing, he added. I wanted you protected before Carol made her move. My jaw tightened at her name. She's coming tomorrow, with a lawyer. Paul smiled faintly. Of course she is. You knew, I said. She always shows up when there's something to take, he said. She's been circling for months, bringing soup, asking questions, pretending to care. I leaned forward. Did you promise her anything? No, he said firmly. I let her assume. That sounded like my brother, always letting silence do the talking, even when it caused damage. She thinks the lake house is hers, I said. Paul opened his eyes and looked straight at me. It never was, he said. Not even when Dad was alive. I bought his share because I wanted to keep it in the family. I just didn't know how to give it back to you without reopening everything. So you waited until Christmas night, I said. Poetic, right? He said, weakly. Or cruel, depends how you look at it. I swallowed. Why, Ellen? Paul's expression softened. Because she listens, he said. And because she loved us both, even when we made it impossible. I thought of Ellen at the table, hands folded, eyes tired. You put her in an impossible position. I know, Paul said, and I'm sorry for that too. We sat in silence for a moment, the machines filling the gaps. Then he shifted slightly, wincing. There's more, he said. I tensed. Of course there is. Carol doesn't just want the house, he said. She wants to contest the trust. On what grounds? I asked. She thinks I wasn't of sound mind when I signed it, he said. And she has a doctor who might say so. My stomach dropped. Is that true? He shook his head. No, but truth isn't always the loudest thing in a courtroom. I leaned back, thinking, the trust is dated tonight. 11 p.m. Yes, he said. That was intentional. Why? Because I needed one more thing in place, he said. Something Carol doesn't know about yet. I looked at him. What thing? He reached under the blanket with effort and pulled out a folded piece of paper. His hand shook as he held it out to me. This, he said, is my statement, recorded with a notary, explaining everything. Why I did what I did. Why Carol gets nothing. I took the paper carefully. Where's the recording? Mark, he said. Your son. I sent him the digital copy this afternoon. He doesn't know what it is yet. My throat tightened. You planned this. I planned what I could, he said. The rest is up to you. I stood up slowly. I don't know how to do this, I said. I'm not you. Paul smiled. No, he said. You're better at letting go. I shook my head. I'm terrible at it. That's why you came, he said. That's why you're here. A nurse knocked softly and stepped inside. She glanced at the monitors, then at Paul. You should rest, she said gently. He nodded, then looked back at me. Promise me something, he said. What? I asked. Don't let this turn you into me, he said. Don't let it harden you. I hesitated. I can't promise that. He smiled faintly. Fair enough. Just don't let her win. I squeezed his hand carefully. Afraid to hurt him. I won't. When I stepped back into the hallway, Mark was waiting, arms crossed, worry written all over his face. Well? He asked. He's still Paul, I said. Stubborn, complicated, and somehow still protecting us. Mark exhaled. What do we do now? I looked at my watch. 2:17 a.m. Now, I said. We prepare for Carol. We drove back in silence, the snow heavier now. My mind replayed everything Paul had said. The trust, the recording, the lawyer Carol was bringing. It felt like a chess game I hadn't agreed to play, but here I was, already in the middle of it. When we pulled into the driveway, Ellen's car was there, lights on inside the house. She opened the door before we even knocked. "Well?" she asked, her voice tight. "He's awake," I said, "and he knows she's coming." Ellen nodded, relief washing over her face. "She called," she said. My pulse quickened. "When?" "10 minutes ago," she said. "She said she'll be here at 8, with paperwork." Mark looked at me. "That's not much time." "No," I said, "but it's enough." Ellen hesitated. She also said something else. I met her eyes. "What?" she said. Ellen swallowed. "If you love your husband, you'll convince him to do the right thing." I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. "Good," I said. "Then she still thinks this is about fear." I looked at the tree, the opened gift, the empty wrapping paper on the floor. "She's about to learn," I said. "It's about truth." I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Carol's smile, the one she used when she thought she was winning. Ellen made coffee before dawn, moving quietly like the house itself was holding its breath. Mark sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone, jaw tight, replaying messages from Paul he still hadn't fully processed. At 6:30, I called my lawyer. Tom and I went to high school together. He answered on the second ring, his voice groggy but sharp as soon as I said Carol's name. "Don't sign anything," he said, immediately. "Don't agree to anything. If she brings documents, we read them line by line, together." "I figured," I said. "She's contesting Paul's mental capacity." Tom exhaled. "That's a common move. Do you have anything from Paul himself?" "Yes," I said. "A notarized statement. And a recording." There was a pause. "Then you're not walking into this empty-handed," Tom said. "I'll be there." By the time Carol's car pulled into the driveway, the sun was barely up, 8 sharp. She was punctual when it mattered to her. She stepped out wearing black, like she was already dressed for a courtroom or a funeral. I couldn't tell which. A man in a gray suit followed her, briefcase in hand. Ellen's hand trembled as she opened the door. Carol swept inside without waiting for an invitation, looking around like she already owned the place. "Well," she said brightly, "Merry Christmas." "Save it," I said. "You brought a lawyer," she smiled. "You brought one too, didn't you?" Tom stepped forward from the living room. Carol's smile faltered for half a second. It was small, but I caught it. "This won't take long," Carol said, waving her hand. "Paul and I already discussed everything." "Funny," I said. "He didn't mention that when I saw him last night." Her eyes widened. "Just for a beat." Then she recovered. "You upset him," she said. "He's not well. You should have stayed away." "That's not your call," I said. Her lawyer cleared his throat and opened the briefcase. "We're here to discuss the transfer of property under the Harris Family Trust, which has already been executed," Tom said calmly. "Effective last night at 11. Carol's head snapped toward him. "That's impossible." "No," Tom said. "It's documented." Carol laughed, sharp and brittle. "You expect us to believe Paul signed legal documents while on heavy medication?" I reached into my pocket and placed the notarized statement on the table. "He signed this with a notary present," I said. "And he recorded a message explaining why." The lawyer paused, reading. Carol leaned over his shoulder, her face darkening with every line. "This changes things," the lawyer said carefully. Carol straightened. "No, it doesn't," she said. "He was manipulated by Ellen." Ellen stiffened. "That's a lie." Carol turned on her. "You've been meddling for years, playing messenger, playing saint." "That's enough," I said. Carol ignored me. "You always wanted to be the good one," she said to Ellen. "The peacemaker. Now look at you." Mark stepped forward. You don't get to talk to her like that. Carol scoffed. Stay out of this, kid. The lawyer raised a hand. Miss Harris, we need to be careful here. I am careful, Carol snapped. I'm careful because I know what Paul promised me. I leaned in. What exactly did he promise you? She hesitated. Just a fraction too long. He said, I'd be taken care of. He never said how. I said. The room went quiet. Tom nodded slowly. Vague promises don't override written trusts, he said. Carol's eyes flashed. Then I'll contest it, she said. I'll drag this out until there's nothing left to fight over. I took a breath. Before you do, I said, there's something you should hear. I nodded to Mark. He pulled out his phone, hands steady now, and pressed play. Paul's voice filled the room again, stronger than I expected. Clear. Carol, he said. If you're listening to this, it means you tried exactly what I knew you would. Carol went pale. I never promised you the house. Paul continued. I never intended to leave you anything beyond what the law requires. Your help was never free. It was never kind, and it never fooled me. Carol's lawyer slowly closed his briefcase. If you contest this, Paul's voice said, everything becomes public, including the money you took from my accounts without permission. Carol gasped. That's a lie. Tom raised an eyebrow. Is it? The room felt suddenly smaller. Carol's lawyer stood. We need to talk, he said quietly to her. She shook her head, furious. Sit down. He didn't. I can't represent you if this recording is legitimate. Carol turned to me, her voice trembling now. You planned this. No, I said. Paul did. She laughed bitterly. He always needed you to clean up after him. I met her gaze. This time he didn't. She grabbed her coat and stormed toward the door. Before leaving, she turned back. This isn't over, she said. Tom spoke calmly. It is for today. The door slammed shut. Silence followed. Ellen sank into a chair, tears spilling freely now. Mark let out a long breath he'd been holding since dawn. I looked at the table, at the letter, at the key. Christmas wasn't quiet anymore, but for the first time in years, it was honest. After Carol left, the house felt hollow, like all the noise had been ripped out at once. Ellen stayed at the table, staring at the wood grain as if it might rearrange itself into something easier to understand. Mark paced the living room, running a hand through his hair over and over, like he was trying to wake himself up. Tom packed his briefcase slowly. I'll file the necessary confirmations this morning, he said. If Carol tries anything else, it'll go through the court. But that recording, that shuts a lot of doors. Thank you, I said. The words felt small compared to the weight he'd just helped lift. He nodded once and left us alone. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Ellen broke the silence. I should have told you sooner, she said quietly. Yes, I said. You should have. She flinched, but she didn't argue. I was afraid, she said. Afraid you'd go to him and it would end the same way. Afraid I'd lose you both. I leaned against the counter. You almost lost me anyway. Her eyes filled again. I know. Mark stopped pacing. We're past that now, he said. We have to figure out what happens next. What happens next, I said. Is I go back to the hospice. Ellen looked up sharply. Today? Yes, I said. I'm not letting the lawyers be the last chapter between us. She nodded slowly. I'll come with you. The drive felt different in daylight. Less heavy, more final. Paul was awake when we arrived, his eyes lighting up when he saw all three of us. Well, he said, looks like you survived Christmas. Barely, I said, sitting beside him. Carol came. He smirked. I figured. She won't be back, I said. Not with that lawyer. Paul exhaled, a long breath he'd probably been holding for months. Good, he said. I didn't want my last weeks to be paperwork. Ellen stepped closer. I'm sorry, she said softly, for keeping secrets. Paul reached for her hand. You did what you thought was right, he said. That counts for something. He turned to me. You angry? Yes, I said honestly. But I'm also tired of being. He nodded. That's fair. We talked for a while. Not about the trust. Not about Carol. About fishing. About Dad. About the stupid things that had driven us apart in the first place. The anger felt smaller when we named it out loud. Before we left, Paul pressed the key into my hand. For the lake house, he said. There's something there you should see. What? I asked. He smiled faintly. A box, in the crawl space. Don't open it alone. That night after Ellen went to bed, I sat in the living room staring at the key. Mark joined me, holding 2 mugs of coffee. You okay? He asked. I don't know, I said. But I will be. He hesitated. Dad, what if Carol comes back? I shook my head. She will, I said. Just not the way she planned. I closed my hand around the key. Tomorrow I'd go to the lake house, not for property, not for money, for answers. I drove to the lake house alone the next morning. Mark wanted to come, but Paul's words stayed with me. Don't open it alone. I needed to see the place first, to remember it without witnesses. Snow dusted the driveway, untouched, like the house had been holding its breath, too. The door opened easily with the key. Inside, everything smelled the same: old wood, cold air, time. I stood there longer than I expected, memories lining up quietly instead of crashing into me. The crawl space was just where Paul said it would be. I lifted the panel and shined a flashlight inside. The box was metal, small, and heavier than it looked. I didn't open it, not yet. I sat at the kitchen table and called Mark. Bring Ellen, I said. And come now. They arrived an hour later. Ellen's eyes filled when she stepped inside. He kept it just like Dad left it, she whispered. We gathered around the box on the table. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were documents, bank statements, letters, and photographs I didn't expect to see. Carol's handwriting was everywhere. Transfers, withdrawals, notes to herself. Mark frowned. She was taking money. Not just a little, I said. A lot. Ellen picked up a photo. It showed Carol sitting beside Paul's hospital bed, smiling for the camera. Tucked behind it was a receipt. A cashier's check dated 3 days later. Paul hadn't just protected the house. He'd been building a case. At the bottom of the box was a flash drive. Taped to it was a note in Paul's handwriting. For when she lies. Mark swallowed. What do we do with this? I closed the box. We don't rush, I said. We do this right. That afternoon, Carol called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was sharp, desperate. You think you won? Call me. Now. I didn't. Instead, I called Tom. By evening, the pieces were in motion, not revenge. Accountability, the kind Paul never had the strength to chase. That night, Ellen sat beside me on the couch. I was wrong to hide things from you, she said. Yes, I said. But you're here now. She took my hand. Whatever comes next, she said. We face it together. I nodded. Outside, snow fell quietly. Inside, for the first time in years, nothing felt unfinished. The call from Tom came early the next morning. I knew it was him before I even looked at the phone. Lawyers don't call early unless something has shifted. She filed, he said, without preamble. I sat at the kitchen table, Ellen across from me, reading my face instead of her coffee. Filed what? I asked, though I already knew. A formal contest, Tom said. She's alleging undue influence, diminished capacity, and financial manipulation. Ellen closed her eyes. She said she would, she murmured. Tom continued. But she overplayed her hand. I straightened. How? She included statements, he said, that directly contradict the financial records we found in the box. That got my attention. Meaning, Tom said. She put things in writing that can be proven false. Dates, amounts, intent. And once that happens, the court doesn't just look at the trust. They start looking at her. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Paul knew this would happen. Yes, Tom said. And he prepared for it. Thoroughly. After the call, Ellen sat quietly for a long time. I never thought it would go this far, she said. It already had, I replied. We just weren't looking. Mark came by that afternoon, holding his phone like it weighed 100 pounds. Dad, he said. Aunt Carol called me 6 times. Did you answer? I asked. No, he said. But she left a voicemail. He played it. Her voice was different now. Not sharp, not confident, tight, controlled. Mark, she said, you're being manipulated. Your father doesn't understand what he's doing. Paul wasn't well. You know that. You know he wasn't himself. If you care about your family, you'll talk to me before this gets ugly. Mark stopped the recording. She sounds scared. She should be, I said. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was afraid, but because memories kept surfacing. Little moments I dismissed over the years. Carol asking about Dad's accounts. Carol insisting on handling paperwork after the funeral. Carol offering to help when Paul went quiet. I saw it now, all of it. The next day, Tom asked us to come into his office. The room smelled like old books and burnt coffee. Carol was already there when we arrived, sitting stiffly beside a different lawyer. She didn't look at us. The judge wasn't present. This was preliminary procedural, but the tension in the room felt anything but small. Tom slid the documents across the table. We have evidence, he said calmly, that Miss Harris withdrew substantial sums from Paul's accounts without authorization. Carol's lawyer frowned. That's a serious accusation. So is fraud, Tom replied. Carol finally looked up at me. Her eyes were red. You're really doing this, she said. You did this, I said quietly. She laughed, brittle and hollow. He owed me. For what? I asked. For being there, she snapped. For showing up when you wouldn't. That's not true, I said. He asked me to come. He just didn't tell me how bad it was. Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispering urgently. She shook her head, then stood up. Fine, she said. Let's talk about the box. Tom's eyebrows lifted slightly. What box? The room went very still. Carol froze. Her mouth opened, then closed. Tom smiled faintly. Interesting, he said. You weren't informed about the box. Her lawyer turned toward her slowly. What box? Carol sat back down hard. I felt my heart hammer, but I kept my voice steady. The one you didn't know existed, I said. The one with the receipts? Her lawyer closed his folder. Miss Harris, he said carefully. We need to speak privately. Carol's face crumpled. Then, just for a second, enough to see the truth slip through. This isn't fair, she whispered. He told me I'd be taken care of. No, I said. He let you believe that. The meeting ended shortly after. No shouting, no drama, just a quiet unraveling. Outside, Mark exhaled deeply. Is it over? Not yet, Tom said. But it's headed in one direction. We went to see Paul that evening. He was weaker now, sleeping more. When he woke and saw us, he smiled faintly. She showed up, didn't she? He asked. Yes, I said. And she slipped? He nodded. She always does. I took his hand. You didn't have to do all this alone. I wasn't alone, he said. I had time, and I had clarity. Ellen leaned in. You also had forgiveness, she said softly. Paul smiled at her. I had hope. When we left, Mark walked behind us. Quiet. In the parking lot, he stopped. Dad, he said. What happens if she loses everything? I thought about that. about Carol's anger, her desperation, her fear. She won't lose everything, I said. She'll lose the lie she built her life on. That night, as I lay in bed beside Ellen, I realized something had shifted. Not just legally, emotionally. The fight wasn't about property anymore, or money, or even betrayal. It was about who gets to tell the story of a life, and for the first time in a long time, my brother was being heard. Paul took a turn 2 days later. Not sudden, not dramatic, just a quiet slide that the nurses recognized before we did. His breathing changed. His eyes stayed closed longer. When the call came, it was mid-afternoon, and the nurse didn't use the word emergency. She didn't have to. "He's asking for you," she said. Ellen and I drove in silence. Mark followed in his own car. No rush this time, just the steady understanding that some things don't wait for permission. Paul was awake when we arrived, though barely. His eyes found mine first. He smiled, or tried to. "Hey," he said. "You look tired." "So do you," I said, forcing a lightness I didn't feel. He breathed out a weak laugh. "Fair." We sat close. The room felt smaller than before, quieter, like it knew what was coming and didn't want to intrude. "I heard she filed," he said. "Yes," I said. "And she slipped." He nodded slowly. "Good." Ellen took his hand. "You don't have to worry about that anymore." "I know," he said. "That's why I can rest." Mark stood at the foot of the bed, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the floor. Paul noticed. "Come here," he said. Mark stepped forward. "I'm sorry I found out the way I did," he said. "I'm sorry you were alone." Paul shook his head faintly. "You didn't owe me anything," he said. "But you gave me time. That mattered." Mark swallowed hard and nodded. Paul looked back at me. "There's one more thing," he said. I felt my chest tighten. "You've done enough." He smiled. "Not that. This is for you." He motioned toward the bedside drawer. I opened it and found another envelope, smaller this time. Lighter. "What is it?" I asked. "Instructions," he said. For after, I didn't open it. I didn't want to read anything that sounded like goodbye. "Promise me something," he said. "I already did," I said. "Promise me you won't keep fighting after I'm gone," he said. "Not with Carol. Not with anyone." You stood up. "That's enough." I nodded slowly. "I promise." He closed his eyes. His breathing steadied, then slowed. We stayed until the nurse came back in. She checked the monitors, then looked at us with a gentle expression that needed no explanation. He passed just before sunset. The funeral was small, smaller than Carol would have liked, I'm sure. She didn't attend. Her lawyer sent a notice instead, something about pending proceedings. I didn't read it. We buried Paul near our father, under a simple stone. No speeches, no grand gestures, just family and a quiet understanding of what had been lost and what had been reclaimed. A week later, Tom called again. "She's withdrawing the contest," he said. I closed my eyes. "Just like that?" "Not exactly," he said. "There's an investigation. She's cooperating. That's usually what people do when they know the story won't hold." "And the trust?" I asked. "Secure," he said. "No further action needed from you." When I hung up, Ellen was watching me carefully. "It's over," I said. She nodded. "I know." Mark came by that evening. He looked lighter, like something had finally unclenched inside him. "I was thinking," he said, "about the lake house." I smiled faintly. "I figured you might." "I don't want it," he said quickly. "Not like that, but I'd like to bring my kids there someday. Tell them about their great-uncle, about what he stood for." "That's exactly what he wanted," I said. We went up to the lake house that weekend. Just the three of us. We cleaned. We fixed what was broken. We laughed at things that used to hurt. In the crawl space, I sealed the box back up, not to hide it, just to put it away. Some truths don't need to be displayed to be honored. That night, Ellen and I sat on the porch, the lake dark and still in front of us. "I almost lost you," she said quietly. "Yes," I said, "but you didn't." She reached for my hand. "Thank you for not walking away." I squeezed her fingers. "Thank you for finally letting me walk toward it." Later alone, I opened the envelope. Paul had left. Inside was a single page. "Don't let silence become your inheritance." I folded it carefully and put it in my wallet. The fight was over. The noise had faded. What remained wasn't victory or revenge. It was clarity. And for the first time in years, Christmas didn't feel like something I'd survived. It felt like something that had changed me. Life didn't snap back into place after Paul's funeral. It eased, slowly, like something heavy being set down after a long carry. The days that followed were quiet in a way that felt earned, not empty. Ellen returned to her routines. Mark went back to work. I stayed busy with small repairs around the house, fixing things that didn't really need fixing, just to feel the motion of progress. A month passed before Carol's name came up again. Tom called one afternoon and asked if I could come by his office. His tone wasn't urgent, but it wasn't casual either. When I arrived, he had a thin file on his desk, much thinner than before. "She accepted a settlement," he said. "Not financial, procedural." I sat down, meaning, "She avoids charges," he said, "in exchange for full restitution and a permanent relinquishment of any claim against Paul's estate, or yours." I thought about that for a moment. "And the investigation?" "Closed," he said. "She cooperated, gave everything back." I nodded slowly. "So that's it." Tom leaned back. "For you, yes." I stood to leave, then paused. "Did she say anything?" Tom hesitated. "She asked if you'd ever forgive her." I let out a quiet breath. "Tell her I already did," I said. "That doesn't mean I want her in my life." Tom nodded. He understood the difference. On the drive home, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not joy, not relief, exactly. Resolution. The kind that doesn't announce itself. That night, Ellen and I sat at the kitchen table long after dinner. The house was quiet. No tension humming under the surface. There, Adridge. No unanswered questions waiting in the corners. "I don't want secrets anymore," she said suddenly. I looked at her. "Neither do I." She took my hand. "Even the small ones," she said. "Especially those." I squeezed her fingers. "Then we start now." A week later, we hosted dinner again. Nothing fancy. Mark brought his kids. Laughter filled the house in a way it hadn't in years. At one point, my grandson asked about the lake house. "Who owns it?" he asked. I smiled. "The family does," I said. That felt right. After everyone left, I stood by the window, looking out at the quiet street. Ellen came up beside me. "You thinking about him?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "And about us?" She leaned her head on my shoulder. "We made it through something," she said. "We did," I agreed. "But we also learned something." She looked up. "What?" "That time doesn't heal what silence hides," I said. "Only truth does." She nodded, understanding more than words could say. On Christmas Eve the following year, we did things differently. No grand plans, no unspoken expectations, just dinner, a few gifts, and conversation that didn't tiptoe around old wounds. At 10:47 p.m., the same time Mark had shouted the year before, he raised his glass. "To Uncle Paul," he said. "For teaching us how to stop running," we toasted, quietly. Honestly, later that night, when the house had settled and Ellen was already asleep, I took out the letter from my wallet, the one Paul had written. "Don't let silence become your inheritance." I thought about how close I'd come to doing exactly that, letting years slip by unspoken, letting anger harden into distance, letting fear make decisions for me. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer beside the bed. The next morning I woke early, and made coffee. Snow fell lightly outside just like the year before. But this time it didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a pause. I stepped onto the porch and breathed in the cold air. 64 years old, still learning, still choosing. I thought about the gift under the tree that had changed everything. The one that was never meant for me, until it was. Sometimes the truth arrives wrapped in shock. Sometimes it waits until you're finally ready to open it. That Christmas didn't give me peace. It gave me something harder. It gave me responsibility for my words, my relationships, my time, and I intend to keep it.